The following transmission is an Utterly Nonsense podcast exclusive presentation. Cue that motherfucking 8-bit intro.
This is the Utterly Nonsense podcast. I'm CJ DeLeo, joined alongside John Kaggs, and today we're talking about
80s sci-fi action is coming back again because the reboots didn't work last time.
In other words, Hollywood is trying to take your favorite properties, put them in a blender, and, hope something else is... help something that people will actually see comes out.
So, what do we got lined up? The most recent thing that came out a few days ago, we have the first official image from the upcoming untitled Terminator reboot, because they got to reboot it again and again and again.
Mm-hmm.
Because somehow they keep finding a way to screw it up.
Right.
So this one will be a direct sequel to Terminator 2 again, and ignore all the other movies again. And this time Sarah Connor is back, so she's not dead.
Well, she was back in Genesis too, right?
Yeah, but that took place before Terminator 1, technically, because she was younger there.
Just the timeline of that whole thing just seems pointless.
They hop around the timelines of, all the movies.
Yeah, so, just to touch upon Terminator real quick, I loved Terminator growing up.
Yeah, man.
I seem to be one of the few people who actually liked the third one. I'm spacing out on the title of the thing right now, but...
it's just Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines.
Rise of the Machines, yes. Of course, Judgment Day was great. I'm actually a fan of the original. I think the original was probably the best one in the trilogy.
I might agree with you.
Salvation kind of killed me. I gotta tell you, I love Christian Bale, but it was just a shitty movie, and I don't know, it just felt out of place to me, and as a result, I ended up not seeing Genesis, despite the fact that I really loved this series growing up. I actually watched, I think I watched all of the Sarah Connor Chronicles.
I never got to see that. Was it good?
It was sort of like what Smallville was to Superman. It's sort of a not low budget, but a lower budget version. It's before the golden age of television, so it still has its sort of campy vibe. But I think it was decent. Again, I haven't really seen it since it was on the air, so I might have a more skewed opinion of it. But I remember the chick they cast as Sarah Connor being decent. I remember the guy they had as John Connor being decent. Eliza Dushku is basically great.
It was Lena Headey as Sarah Connor.
Mm-hmm.
From Game of Thrones. Well, she would go on to be in Game of Thrones. And then they had Emilia Clarke from Game of Thrones as Sarah Connor.
Oh, she was on that? Oh, in Genesis, yeah.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people criticize that, but I saw it, and I didn't think she was that bad. And I thought she was okay.
Well, I'd say the issue as someone who hasn't seen the movie is that she's just too recognizable of a face. She doesn't really look too much like Sarah Connor, so it doesn't really make sense from that aspect of the whole thing.
I thought Jai Courtney was not that great of a Kyle Reese. First of all, he looks nothing like him, and he's just a pretty vanilla actor. Judging by that movie, I don't think he fit well.
I have nothing outwardly against Jai Courtney, but here's the thing, I feel like you could get away with casting a more well-known actor in that role just because, Kyle Reese I don't think has the same sort of iconic status as Sarah Connor.
Right.
It's I can't picture Kyle Reese in my head, but I would know him if I saw him,
He's Michael Biehn, man. It's also Corporal Hicks in Aliens, which we'll get to a little later.
That being said, Jai Courtney's definitely not as recognizable as Emilia Clarke. Aside from this, his best-known role is probably Suicide Squad, right?
Yeah, I was thinking that. I was like, oh, hey, that's Captain Boomerang.
Yeah, which, again, I actually really loved his performance in that. Again, just to recap my feelings on Suicide Squad, good movie, and upon first watching, subsequent watchings, it gets gradually worse. still good things about it, still enjoyable, but, if you examine it critically, it sort of falls apart. Go on.
So, yeah, very quickly, my thoughts on the Terminator franchise. 1 and 2, so good, man, so good. But I always have trouble trying to decide which one I like better. I don't really like one better than the other. I just both think they're about equally good. 3 I liked. I watched it when I was young, so I really didn't have any kind of notion of what a Terminator movie should be. It was just, it's another movie.
Right.
So I never disliked it. Salvation, when I first watched, I was kind of disappointed because I was expecting to see the future war that we see at the beginning of Terminator 2. But after I watched it, and I read up on it, it was supposed to be the first in a trilogy, all taking place during the whole war. So you can see how John Connor became, the leader of the humans, because he wasn't at first. He wasn't the leader in that movie, and it makes sense. Why would we trust this guy who's just a no-name that nobody knows? So I was actually anticipating to see that whole thing, so I don't really hate that movie either. Okay. And Genesis was
Yeah. Okay, so what's
let's talk about the picture.
Titled, or... Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't have a title yet, but what we see in the picture is Linda Hamilton back as Sarah Connor. She's wearing some kind of tactical vest.
That I didn't even notice at first. So let's pull up the
right.
image here for our YouTube viewers. For you audio guys, we'll just describe it vividly.
So we see Sarah Connor with some shortcut blonde hair on the right. I don't know why I'm talking like Bob Ross. You know why? Because I'm painting a picture here.
Okay, so I was just looking at this before. Honestly, I didn't even notice that was Linda Hamilton at first.
Yeah, it is.
She's definitely older. She's definitely, different looking with the blonde hair and all that. Girl in the middle kind of looks like a dude.
Yeah, and that's because I guess she's going to be the Terminator on the good side. I don't know.
Okay. Why?
Why?
I mean...
I don't know. I guess it's like the Sarah Connor Chronicles where they wanted a female protector.
Well, what's her name? I said Eliza Dushku before. I realized, right after I said it, that was wrong. I forget what her name is. She was also in Firefly. I don't know. You know who I'm talking about? The Terminator from that?
Summer Glau?
Summer Glau, yes. Yeah. She actually was decent in the role. And
her name was Cameron, in paying homage to James Cameron, who is producing this new movie.
Yeah. Okay, so, she was good. So we were talking before... did you want to say what the Hollywood Reporter's reaction to this whole thing was first? Yeah,
so Hollywood Reporter points out something that you don't see in this picture, which is any males. There's no males, and they say, this is such a great thing, so great, we need more female action stars. Yeah, man, it was always a story about a woman. Yeah, screw the males. And I just say, hello, Arnold? What about John Connor? They're the two most central figures to the whole franchise. It's the dance between those two things is what defines it. What came first, the Terminator or the John Connor? Chicken or the egg? That's the whole story about the paradoxical nature and the existence of these two things. So, why are you trying to inject more politics into this? Can't we just stop with the politics, man? I'm tired of it.
Okay, so we were sort of talking about this right before we started recording.
It's Hollywood Reporter, so no big deal.
Yeah, Hollywood Reporter definitely has its sort of overly preachy moments when it comes to politics. So, I'm going to preface this by saying I'm pretty far left when it comes to politics.
Yeah, if you don't believe that, just check his Twitter daily.
Yeah, all the time. Facebook too now.
I look at it and I'm like, do you ever rest?
No, I really don't. I just tweet in my sleep now.
Yeah. So does Trump, apparently.
So I'm actually not too bad. As far as liberals go when it comes to Trump bashing, I'm pretty laid back about the whole thing. Honestly, he's pretty moderate as far as Republicans go. I really couldn't care less. But just to approach this from a more liberal standpoint, but from a more rational liberal standpoint.
Ooh, careful with those two words. Sometimes they don't always mix. Oh, boy.
Well, you could say either side is irrational. Either side has its radicals and its morons.
I'm a radical centrist, to be honest.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense. Okay.
I'm the far alt radical center.
Okay. Subscribe to Utterly Nonsense to hear more of John's radical centrist political views. And eventually try to figure out what he actually believes. Just to...
The earth is flat.
So just to approach this with my brand of liberalism, so we were talking a bit before about what makes a good feminist icon, what feminism should be, and for what it's worth, I really don't approve. Approve's not the right word. I don't really agree with modern feminism just because of what it's sort of devolved into. I mean, there was definitely a time and a place for feminism, right? Like, legitimately less than a century ago, women didn't have the right to vote. I think people tend to forget how recent that was. But again, like, considering modern feminism is about how dudes are unfair to women in Hollywood, how, like, they're making shit up about the wage gap, I don't know how people get behind this, you know? Like, so what's wrong with this specifically? Like, you look at Sarah Connor and other similar feminist icons prior to this century, prior to the last, I'd say it happened like 10 years ago, this sort of push for radical feminism.
Yeah.
You know, you didn't have to shoehorn them in there for them to be a great feminist hero. They were already great heroes. You don't have to put any sort of label on it, you know? You don't have to... Like, their gender is not at the forefront of their... the gender of the character should not be at the forefront of your mind. If they're a great character, they should just stand on their own.
Here's what I think is an important principle. A character should set an example not as a result of what they look like or what they are. It's what they do, right? Actions speak louder than words. Actions are what you follow. It's not who you are underneath. It's what you do that defines you. So, I think that all of the original super feminist icons of the 80s who were like action heroes, the few that there were, they were just people who did shit. They were cool, they kicked ass, and there wasn't really a focus on the fact that they were, female, and they didn't have to mention it all the time, saying, "Ha, I did this because it was a woman's job." No, it's just, this thing needs to be done, and I'm the one to do it.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty well said. So just to continue on this topic of reboots, I know you had a few others pulled up.
Oh, yeah. Reboots/sequels. So another franchise about a thing who is part man, part machine, but all cop.
No, that's what you're going for.
Robocop Returns is now in the works, and it's actually a rewrite of the original planned sequel to the first Robocop. So they're getting the original writers back to do this thing, and it's going to be directed by Neil Blomkamp. I think that's a pretty good choice.
Okay, what else has he done for our less...
Well, he's got District 9, Chappie, Elysium.
Okay, so he knows how to tell a good sci-fi story, is what you're saying. Like, he's pretty seasoned in that regard.
Yeah, and especially, because I think those stories have a thing in common where it's coming from, an environment of, how should I say... Not necessarily poor people, but people who basically have to punch up a lot. And, that's kind of the setting. And Robocop, of course, takes place in Detroit. So I don't know if he'll work that kind of element into it, but, might be a thing. But he definitely knows how to do some cool sci-fi stuff.
So just for reference, how long ago was the original Robocop?
Oh, original Robocop, I'm going to say 84. Let me check real quick.
Sounds about right. So... It does beg the question, are they going to...
No, 87, my bad. 1987.
Okay, so it's not as big of a jump, but so the question remains, are they going to try to go for a Blade Runner type thing where they actually, let the time gap between this original and the sequel, sort of serve them, or are they going to try to, cram it in as being a direct sequel, a couple years after the fact?
That's a good question, and that answer I don't have. From what I read, I think it's on this website, Deadline, it didn't talk about that. It was just talking about the fact that this was planned, but then it wasn't done, and then went with a different, script. And then we had the RoboCop reboot in 2014, which just fell flat, which I thought wasn't a terrible movie. It was okay. Nowhere near the level of the original Robocop, because, I mean, it's pretty hard to replicate Paul Verhoeven, the original director. He also directed Total Recall with Arnold. He has a very unique style.
Did you see the Total Recall remake?
Nope.
Okay, couple quick things just to rant about this. Not awful from a CG perspective. They did decently to try to recreate the feelings of the original. You can't replace Schwarzenegger, obviously, but like the one thing that really bugged me about the remake was the ending, because like, you know how it's sort of left up in the air as to whether or not Schwarzenegger is actually like this what would you call him, secret agent, spy,
a sleeper agent.
Yeah, so no ambiguity here. Like, they completely like left the mystery out of it, and you know, it's made clear that he's not in a simulation, that he actually is a secret agent who had his mind wiped.
Yeah. Well, to jump on that real quick, I just watched Total Recall recently, and I think it's pretty... I'll be on the side to say that it all actually happened, because of one key scene. When he first goes to the recall center, and they say, okay, well, we've decided what you're going to do, and now we're going to, put you to sleep. When they do that, when they give him the anesthetic or whatever, and then he starts freaking out, and they're like, he's talking about on Mars. He's like, well, why'd you give him the thing and you didn't sedate him properly? They said, that's the thing. We didn't give it to him yet. He is actually on Mars. That was all happening while Arnold wasn't aware of it. Like, they knocked him out, and then they were still talking. So I think the fact that it shows interaction going on while he wasn't conscious kind of, I don't know, proves or highly suggests that it did happen.
Well, that's great. I mean, I haven't really thought about that specific moment as much, but it does raise a good point. But what I really love about this original was the ambiguity, the fact that we can theorize about it, the fact that there is some, like, it's just the mark of a good ending, like,
yeah.
It's the kind of thing that, it came out nearly 30 years ago and we're still talking about it,
It's freaking classic.
Like, there's just so many great Schwarzenegger movies that, like, how does he not get more respect as an actor,
Quick fun fact, the guy who's the bad guy in that movie, not the main bad guy, the one who was like how would you call him? He was like the guy who was running after Arnold the whole time. Richter was played by Michael Ironside, who is also the voice of Darkseid in the Justice League animated series.
Oh, that's
and
cool.
The old man who was the main bad guy was also the main bad guy in the original Robocop. The vice president who commissioned the whole thing. And he's like, you can't shoot me. It's your directive number 4. As long as I'm leader of this company, you can't do anything. And then the actual CEO says, you're fired! Thank you. Shoots him.
Well, I can say I honestly didn't know that.
Oh boy. That's a little hidden tease.
Yeah.
Keep on the lookout for those keywords. Oh yeah, one thing I forgot to mention. Arnold is returning for the new Terminator, of course. And so is John Connor, but I think it's going to be flashbacks because they cast some kid who looks a lot like the kid from Terminator 2, and they said that they're going to use like digital stuff to make his face exactly match it. So I think there'll be flashbacks of John Connor, but not in the active story. I don't know why.
So that actually reminds me of another upcoming sequel. And this one, I think, sequel's the right word. It's actually very similar circumstances to Terminator. So, I actually just watched the Roast of Bruce Willis the other day, which, Comedy Central, they're a hit or a miss. This one was actually pretty funny. Pretty good lineup, all things considered. So Die Hard 6 is coming pretty soon.
Big guy,
which,
yay.
I wasn't even aware there was a 5th one.
Oh, you didn't? The one where they go to Russia?
Well, I saw one. I saw 1 through 4. And I'm always cool for a good action movie, but after like the first one, they all sort of go downhill. Second one was good too, but relatively speaking, there's no really hitting the initial.
Guess who played John McClane's son in the last Die Hard? Jai Courtney.
Oh,
this is all connected, man.
All ties together. Yeah. So The interesting thing about Die Hard 6, which, I just read the other day, we don't know too much about it yet, because I think it's still like a year out, something like that. There's actually going to be flashbacks. It's going to function sort of like a prequel to the original Die Hard, where there's going to be flashbacks to Bruce Willis's, John McClane's character before the events of the first Die Hard. So I'm not sure if they're going to de-age Bruce Willis for that, or if they're going to cast a younger actor, but I don't know, kind of an interesting way of tying them all together. I feel like there's a solid chance that this will be the last Die Hard.
It sounds like they kind of make it, or want to make it that way, to close out the newer trilogy, I guess you could call it. The one that started was 4.
Which, honestly, like, one of the big reasons the newer Die Hards don't really stack up with the original, like, it just gets to the point, especially in 4. I haven't seen 5, but I'd imagine it's sort of the same way, where he goes basically from being just this ordinary, everyday cop who was sort of trapped in a bad situation and becoming a full-fledged action hero. And I don't know, like, logically it just feels like it comes out of nowhere. And I don't know, I'm anxious to see what they do with the 6th one, see if they can keep it fresh at all. And clearly some series can become better. You look at Mission Impossible.
Oh yeah, I just saw the new one.
One's
man.
called. What'd you think?
I thought it was pretty great. 'Cause I saw the 5th one in theaters too, and I really, really liked it. So the way I consider this one is kind of like number 5, but plus. It's like, the runtime is longer, and they have more tense scenes. It's kind of exhausting at the end, actually, and it's a little bit more serious. But it was also the same director, Christopher McQuarrie, I think his name is. Worked on a few Tom Cruise movies.
He directed the first one too, right? The very first?
I don't know, actually.
That, I feel like I should know that offhand. So there's no real beating out the first one for me, but the fact that it's been able to keep up this momentum, like, years after the fact, which I think the first one came out, like, mid-90s?
The first one was 96, and no, it wasn't Christopher McQuarrie.
Oh, who was it?
Brian De Palma.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. So, the fact that they've been able to keep up that momentum for this 20-year period is kind of impressive. That's sort of the hallmark of a great series.
Yeah.
Were there any other reboots you had in mind? I know you had a whole list prepared.
Of course. Well, continuing with the 80s sci-fi action trend, we have coming out this year, actually, The Predator. First you had Predator, then Predator 2, then Alien vs. Predator, Alien vs. Predator Requiem.
Well, that hardly counts, but...
Yeah, but it's still, like, considered in-universe, so they're, like, canon, I'm pretty sure, to the Predator movies, but not to the Alien movies. Then you had Predators, and now The Predator.
Yeah.
And, this one is just, like, another story within the world of Predator, kind of like as they all are. And you'll see... What is that? It's like another freaking military team. I don't know. They do something, and some kid, he finds like a predator ship, and he activates the beacon, so it brings predators back to Earth. But as with them, some kind of mutated, advanced version of them, I guess, try to kill everybody, and then the old predators side with the humans. So you're gonna see predators fighting each other, humans fighting them. All sorts of crazy stuff going on. I saw the trailer. The first one kind of looked... I don't know, it looked alright.
I don't know. It sounds pretty... I don't even know how to describe it. It sounds like another, like, cash grab,
Well, of course it is. But I don't know. I think it'll be hit or miss.
Yeah. Another sort of thing that you really can't beat the original. And another great Schwarzenegger classic,
Yeah. As far as people I know that are in this movie, Thomas Jane, who was Punisher in 2004. And Keegan-Michael Key.
Oh, I actually like
How
him.
about that?
I mean, he's funny. He's a great actor, but
I can't imagine
put him
what
in
he's been doing.
That sort of thing is just why.
I have no idea. And this one's supposed to be the first in a new trilogy. That's what they always say when they reboot.
Yeah. Well, I guess. Yeah, I mean, I have nothing else to say. That's just the Hollywood machine right there.
Yeah, so I don't know. It could be alright, but watch the trailer if you haven't. Judge it for yourself.
We will see.
And finally, we referenced Aliens, so what's been going on with Aliens? Well, really nothing is the answer, because you had Alien Covenant, which I think it was critically not that well received. I think it did okay,
Right.
box office-wise. But what was already being planned before that even came out was Alien 5, directed by Neil Blomkamp. And it would have erased all the events after Aliens, so after the second movie, because it was going to bring back Ripley and Corporal Hicks, Michael Biehn, and just do a movie about them.
Okay, so it's sort of their version of Days of Future Past.
Don't think it was going to involve time travel.
Well, what I mean is it's erasing the other movies and sort of just, gives them an excuse to do, sort of their own thing moving forward. So just to list out all the Alien movies, just to show how ridiculous it is, how Hollywood just keeps pumping out shit like this. Alien.
Just producing turds.
Alien was the first one, 1976. Definitely a classic. Followed by Aliens, another awesome movie. Sort of blends horror and blends. Yeah, exactly. Horror with sci-fi. With it's just a great 80's movie. Following that, in 1992 was Alien 3.
Yeah,
which I'm actually looking at Rotten Tomatoes right now. Critical score 45%, audience score 47%. So it's one of those rare movies where the audience and the critics seem to be pretty united. Followed by Alien Resurrection in 1997, also critically panned. 2004 was Alien vs. Predator, which those are always kind of fun, but just definitely fucking stupid.
Those technically don't count as Alien movies.
Yeah.
Like
2007 was Alien vs. Predator 2, Requiem.
Garbage. I saw that. Don't like it. Terrible.
Followed by Prometheus in 2012, which I didn't even know was an Alien movie. But
it wasn't. I think it wasn't originally supposed to be, but then they kind of said, what the heck.
Okay. And then Alien Covenant was this past year, which looked decent. Got modest reviews, but I don't know.
The funny thing was, I thought they set up something pretty interesting in Prometheus with like the whole origin of the human race and these engineers, what are they? But then instead of doing Prometheus 2, they did Alien Covenant, and then they kind of address it because you see the engineers again, but it's just for the purpose of showing another xenomorph type so they can get chased by it.
Yeah.
So it's like,
it's like I haven't actually seen Prometheus, but it sort of sounds like Scientology in a nutshell. Aliens sort of created us.
Decent movie.
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, so Neil Blomkamp was supposed to do Alien 5 before Covenant started happening because Ridley Scott said, hey, I want to do it. I want to do my Prometheus sequel. So they put Alien 5 on hold, and it's just been on hold since then. Yeah. And he says that he's pretty much done with it, clearly, since now he's going to do Robocop 2.
Yeah, I don't know. It just seems sort of weird to me that Ridley Scott went from the very first Alien all the way to Prometheus. Like, he didn't think to step in at all anywhere along the line. And then he came back for Covenant. Kind of interesting.
And the one weird thing was there's a lot of things that you can clearly see in Prometheus which are supposed to connect back to the first Alien, like the planetoid they're on, LV, whatever it is, but the number doesn't match, the number designation, even though it should, because that big round ship thing you see in Alien that's crashed there with the engineer in it, that's the thing that they're in Prometheus, that crashes on the planet and it's left there. So it's like, oh, yeah, that's where it came from. And you even see the main character woman, she leaves the distress signal that they find in Alien, but according to the technicalities, it's not the same thing. So it's like, well, what was the point then?
Yeah,
and then then the years don't match. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. And what was it else that doesn't match? The thing you see at the end of Prometheus isn't a xenomorph; it's like some kind of protomorph.
Okay, well, at least from what I'm hearing, it just sounds like Ridley Scott might have had some initial vision that just didn't pan out.
That's what I was thinking.
It just sounds like he generally just stopped caring after the first one, and I don't know, if he had some initial vision, it just didn't come into fruition.
Or it's just someone didn't check the details.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, like, it just seems like poor planning to me. It just seems like I don't know, he got bored somewhere along the way and just wanted to make money. Which, when it comes down to it, is sort of the premise of every major Hollywood blockbuster, you know?
Yeah, I think maybe the studio, and this is just going out on a limb, I think maybe the studio said, yeah, this movie's great, but it doesn't have any franchise power, so we want you to work Alien into it because money.
Great.
But I hear that it was like that from the beginning with the script, so I don't know.
Okay, so I think...
Aliens in limbo. Robocop's coming back. Terminator's coming back. Predator's coming back.
So, I mean...
Die Hard's coming back.
So we've been talking for about half an hour now. I feel like everyone sort of understands how we feel about reboots and sequel
Is there
number
anything
6.
better than classic 80s sci-fi action?
Not that I can think of.
You're goddamn right.
Okay, so without further ado, I'm CJ DeLeo, joined alongside John Kaggs. This is the Utterly Nonsense podcast, in which we always discuss entertainment and pop culture news, and, you know, give our sort of half-brained collegiate thoughts on them. So if you actually stuck around this long and like what you heard, you might be watching this on YouTube, you might be listening to this on iTunes or SoundCloud, you know, definitely follow us, subscribe to us, whatever. Like this video if you're on YouTube. You know, you can find us on a number of other sources if this isn't your usual viewing platform.
Listen, just put Utterly Nonsense Podcast into Google, find all the links, and click them all. Just check it out.
Otherwise, just, you know, check out the About section on our YouTube page, because all our links are there.
Yeah, it's got everything.
So without further ado, 8-bit music, play us out.
Your move, creep. Come at me if you want to live.